The last time I saw my mother's face, it was from across a driveway, hers lit by porch light, mine hidden behind a cab window at midnight. She didn't wave. She didn't even come outside. She just stood there with her arms crossed, like she was watching a delivery get returned to sender. That was 10 years ago. So when her name flashed across my phone on a random Tuesday morning, my first instinct wasn't shock, it was nausea. 10 years of silence turned into a casual ringtone, like she was calling to check on the weather. I let it go to voicemail. No part of me wanted to hear her voice again, but my hand still shook. She left a message. Rosy, hi. I know it's been a while. We need to talk. It's about the estate. It's urgent. Estate. Not family. Not you. The estate. Even her language confirmed it. This wasn't a reunion. This was a transaction. I stared at the screen, not moving. My apartment was silent except for the buzz of the refrigerator and the faint clink of a ceiling fan. I didn't return the call. But I knew. I just knew. This wasn't the last time I'd hear from them. 2 hours later, I got a second message. This one from Jack. No hey? No, hope you're okay. Just, there's a legal discrepancy in the trust paperwork. Your name is still associated with the original deed. We need your signature to clear it. Call me. Clear it. As if I were a smudge on a glass pane. As if they hadn't spent a decade pretending I was dead. But here's the thing they never realized. I had never disappeared. I had just gone quiet. 10 years ago, I was 18, one semester into a full ride at Midwestern State. I came home for winter break to find my room repainted, my things in boxes, my name missing from the Christmas card pile. My mother said it was a reset. My father said, it's better this way. My brother didn't say anything at all. The exile wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. There were no slamming doors, no disownment ceremony, no dramatic shouts of betrayal, just cold logistics. First, my college funds disappeared. Then my phone plan was disconnected. Then my name slowly vanished from family group chats, shared calendars, and eventually legal forms. I was too stunned to fight back. First. But I had one instinct stronger than pain: documentation. My grandmother, a retired librarian, once told me, when people forget your story, you write it down until they can't. That's what I did. I archived everything: texts, tuition receipts, bank statements, even old emails where my name was CC'd in family updates. I didn't know why at the time, but something in me whispered, keep proof. You might need it. And now, 10 years later, they were asking for that same name to fix a mistake. I didn't call Jack. I emailed him instead. Send me the details. An hour later, a PDF arrived in my inbox. It was a scanned document titled Declaration of Conditional Heirship. I scrolled through legalese until my eyes caught it. My name, Rosalind Amber Hale, typed in faded ink at the bottom. There it was. A ghost signature on a legacy they tried to erase. They couldn't just delete me. Not fully. Not legally. And now that error was catching up with them. That evening I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk until the street lamps flicked on and the sky turned navy blue. Then I pulled out the encrypted USB I hadn't touched in 5 years. Inside was a folder labeled Legacy Originals. Screenshots. Copies. Metadata logs. And one audio file my mother recorded by accident, telling someone at her store that I'd moved away for good by choice. They didn't just erase me. They rewrote me. The next day, I went to work like normal, quiet nonprofit office, low-stakes law advising, the kind of job where you type more than you talk. But my mind was elsewhere. Every legal form I touched reminded me of the one that still bore my name. That afternoon, I opened a private tab and searched the county records. My name still appeared in 2 places: the property deed and the initial tax declaration on the land inherited from my grandmother. According to those records, I wasn't dead. I was dormant. They had tried to scrub me out. But paper keeps secrets. And so do people. I sent another email to Jack. I'll meet. But on my terms. They agreed too quickly. That told me everything I needed to know. We met 3 days later in a neutral office space, halfway between my city and theirs. Clean carpet. Beige walls. Framed quotes about professionalism. A setting so bland it made betrayal feel almost clinical. Jack arrived first, in a too tight suit and a fake smile. My mother followed, looking thinner than I remembered, but still calculating. Her voice was soft, like she was auditioning for sympathy. "Rosy, thank you for coming. I know this is awkward. We just need to clarify some things in the trust." I cut her off. "Let's not pretend we're here for closure. You need a favor. That's all." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did. For a split second they hardened. Jack laid out the paperwork. He explained how the foundation had flagged inconsistencies in the heir list, how a revalidation was required, how it would really help if I could confirm a few dates. He didn't mention that their lawyer likely forged my signature on the update. He didn't mention that I still held the original documents with creation timestamps that contradicted theirs. He didn't know that I knew how to subpoena a notary record. I looked at them and said nothing. Then I smiled. Just slightly, because for the first time in a decade I wasn't the one cornered. Jack was still talking when I started counting the lies. Not out loud, not on my fingers, just mentally, like tally marks scratched on prison walls. One for every sentence that skirted the truth. One for every time my name was used as a utility, not a person. "We didn't mean to leave you out." That was lie number 1. The documents just got outdated. Lie number 2. "It's not personal. We just need to move forward." Lie number 3. And it wasn't even 5 minutes in. I didn't reply. I let him fill the space with justifications. I watched my mother sip tea from a travel mug like it could wash away the last decade. But her hands were trembling. Just slightly. They weren't ready for me to come back calm. They expected anger. They prepared for an outburst. Not precision. When Jack slid the document across the table, I didn't touch it. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin black folder. I laid it down slowly, deliberately, the way you place a scalpel on a tray. "This," I said, "is what I brought." Inside were printed copies of the trust's original filing, my enrollment letter from Midwestern State, and an email chain dated December 2015, subject line, "Final tuition authorization." It was addressed to me, CC'd to our family accountant, and it showed a signature, my father's, confirming the last disbursement. It also showed that 2 days later, that same accountant sent another email to Jack, titled, "Rosy's status, changed to inactive?" They didn't even wait until the new year to start deleting me. I didn't look up. I just kept going. I showed the notarized copy of the original deed, the one with all 3 of our names listed as contingent heirs. Mine hadn't been removed. Not officially. Not legally. "Any update that contradicts this," I said, "is forgery." Jack laughed nervously. "Rosy, come on. That's a heavy word." "It's also a legal one," I replied. That was the moment the tone shifted. Before I had been a nuisance, a ghost in the machine. Now I was a liability. The moment they realized I wasn't confused, I was prepared. The room dropped a few degrees. My mother finally spoke. "We just didn't know how to reach you. You left." "No," I said. "You deleted me. There's a difference." It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and something in the air cracked. Maybe it was their narrative. Maybe it was the silence breaking. They didn't argue. Not right away. Instead, my mother reached for the trust documents again, flipped to the amendment page and pointed to a signature. "This says you withdrew. It says someone withdrew using my name." She blinked. "I've never lived in Arizona," I added. "And this notary? She only got her certification in 2020. This document is dated 2018. Jack leaned forward. "We had to do what made sense at the time. You weren't around. We couldn't leave everything hanging." "You couldn't leave me hanging either," I said. "But you did." Then I pulled out my final item, a flash drive in a clear plastic case. I didn't plug it in. I just held it in my palm. "This contains the original metadata logs, timestamped uploads, IP addresses, everything that proves I never signed that update. Not in 2018. Not ever." The panic was subtle, but it was there. My mother's fingers tightened around her mug. Jack scratched behind his ear like he wanted to disappear into his collar. I didn't come to scream. I came to dismantle. And they didn't know how to respond to that. Jack tried one last angle. "Okay, say that's true. What do you want?" "Money. Your share of the land." I shook my head. "I want accountability. Public. Not whispered. not behind some law office door. I want what was stolen acknowledged. Jack scoffed. That's not how this works. Then it's not going to work at all. That's when I realized they still believed they had leverage. They thought I came back to negotiate, but I hadn't. I came to document. Everything they said was being recorded. My phone, sitting silently on the chair beside me, had been capturing the meeting from the moment I walked in. Not because I wanted drama, because I didn't trust their version of reality to go unchallenged. They asked for a break. I let them step outside. When they returned, my mother looked different. Paler. Slower. She sat down without speaking. Jack followed, mouth tight. We'll need to review everything, he said. I nodded. Of course. I'll email you a full index of my records, originals and backups. He looked surprised. You're serious? I always was. They expected vengeance. What they got was evidence. And evidence is hard to refute when it's printed, stamped, and backed up twice. We ended the meeting with no resolution. No handshake. Just an understanding. If they moved forward without me, it would be fraud. If they moved forward with me, they'd have to admit everything they did. I left the building quietly. No theatrics. No final stares. But in the parking lot, I sat in my car and exhaled for the first time in hours. I had spent 10 years being silent. Now I was louder than ever, and I hadn't even raised my voice. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. And I wasn't done yet. The thing about being erased is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a gunshot, it's a slow bleed. My exile didn't start with a fight. There were no slammed doors, no shouted names, no ultimatums. It started with the little things. The first was the Christmas photo. I still remember standing at the bottom of the stairs, wearing the burgundy dress my grandmother had sent me 2 weeks earlier. Everyone else was already outside. I thought they were waiting for me. But when I stepped out, the photo had just been taken. Jack was slipping his phone back into his pocket. We figured you were busy, my mother said, not even turning. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. Then came the family group chat. First, I just stopped getting replies. Then I noticed the name of the group had changed from Hail Family 5 to just Hail Group. Subtle. Clean. I didn't even get a notification. I was just gone. I tried asking my mother about it once. She said it was probably a technical glitch. Then she changed the subject. But the final straw came in January, 2 weeks before spring semester. I'd come home from my part-time job to find my financial aid portal flagged red. Funding suspended. I thought it was a mistake. I called the office. They said the authorization code from my guarantor, my father, had been revoked. No explanation. When I called him, he answered the phone like I was a telemarketer. Frank Hale speaking. It's me, I said. Rosy. Pause. Oh. There was no warmth in that syllable. Just resignation. Like I was an error reappearing on a clean page. He said I'd have to find alternate options. That things had changed. That the family had reevaluated priorities. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat on the kitchen floor, holding my phone, and realized I had become an orphan with parents still alive. For the first 6 months, I was too shocked to function. I couch surfed with college friends, took 3 side jobs, and eventually found a moldy basement studio for rent behind an old laundromat. The walls peeled. The heat worked half the time. But it was mine. I stopped posting online. I stopped calling people. One by one, my social circle shrank until it was just me and the girl at the sandwich shop who always gave me an extra pickle without asking. Grief is quiet when it's personal. But erasure? It echoes. One day I ran into a childhood friend, Emma, in a library parking lot. She barely recognized me. When I asked if she wanted to grab coffee, she said, I heard you left because you had a breakdown. I didn't leave. I was left. But that's when something inside me shifted. If they were going to rewrite my story, I was going to document the real one. It started with screenshots of old emails, calendars, group invites. Then scanned copies of my tuition statements. My grandmother's letters. Even old voice memos where she said things like, this trust is for you. It's yours. I uploaded them to cloud folders under fake project names, Research Archivist 17, Legacy Comp Audit. No one knew what they were. But I did. Every digital folder was a breadcrumb trail back to a truth they tried to bury. By 2018 I had a system. Every document was triple-backed, metadata tracked, all encrypted. I even bought a second-hand laptop just for storage. It had no apps, no browser, just folders and logs. I called it the Vault. It wasn't about revenge. It was survival. Then came the letter from the county. I'd been flagged as an inactive heir on a property reassessment form. They asked me to confirm a withdrawal, but I hadn't withdrawn. The document they attached had my name on it, but the font was wrong. The signature wasn't mine, and the notary's stamp looked off. Forgery isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a lazy lie in a fancy font. That night, I went through every file I had, and I found it, an old PDF from 2015 with the original clause, signed by my grandmother, listing me as the second contingent heir. The metadata confirmed the file hadn't been touched since the day she scanned it. I compared it to the new one they'd sent me. Same structure, same clause, but one detail was different. A withdrawal note at the bottom with a digital signature, dated 2 years after she died. They hadn't just erased me, they had forged a ghost to do it. I sent a copy of both files to the Historical Property Oversight Foundation under a formal inquiry. I didn't hear back for weeks, but when I did, they asked for more documentation. That's when I realized something big was shifting. The foundation wasn't just interested, they were concerned. A forged heir withdrawal could trigger a full audit, and a full audit could freeze the estate. My silence had become their liability. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt awake, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. That was the moment I knew. If they ever came back, if they ever knocked on my door, called my name, begged for my signature, I wouldn't just be ready. I'd be the one holding the pen. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and false hope, the kind of place where people sign things they'll regret later. Cheap chairs, frosted glass, a water cooler that hummed louder than the tension in the air. Jack was already there when I arrived, pacing like a man who'd studied his opponent but still wasn't sure which round he'd lose. My mother sat near the window, holding a thermos like it might calm her nerves. It didn't. The attorney was new, younger, polished, but not quite experienced enough to hide the flicker of confusion when he saw me walk in alone. They expected compliance. I brought confrontation. I didn't sit right away. I placed my laptop on the table, opened it, and set a small voice recorder beside it. The click it made when I hit record sounded louder than thunder. "Let's begin," I said. The lawyer nodded awkwardly. "Rosy, thank you for being here. Let's start with the deed revision." "No," I interrupted. "Let's start with this." I slid a folder across the table. Not thick, just deliberate. Inside, the original notarized trust document. My inclusion as heir. Signature dates. Metadata printouts. All time-stamped. Jack reached for it. I stopped him with a look. "Let the attorney read it first," I said. "It's important he knows what's real before he processes what's fake." Silence fell like a verdict. I watched the lawyer's eyes flick across the pages. His eyebrows twitched. The corners of his mouth tightened. "I've never seen this version," he muttered. "No," I said. "Because your office filed the forged one." My mother's face paled. Jack said nothing. I placed a second document beside the first. The forged declaration. Different signature. Same layout. Dated posthumously from my grandmother. A notary stamp from Arizona. One that didn't exist until 2 years after the supposed signing. I turned to the lawyer. "Would you like to call that notary? Or should I?" He didn't answer. "Rosy," Jack started. "We're just trying to move forward. Then do it legally," I snapped. "Or don't do it at all." The tone shifted. This wasn't negotiation anymore. It was exposure. I reached into my bag again and pulled out the final piece. A small matte black USB drive. I didn't pass it around. I just placed it on the center of the table like a detonator. "This," I said, "contains chain of custody logs, blockchain verification, IP metadata, and an audio recording from 2016. My grandmother. Her voice. Naming me explicitly." My mother flinched like the word explicitly was a slap. "I also have a voice memo from 2018. You, Mom. Telling someone you'd simplified the will after I left." You said I was no longer part of the family. I didn't have to dig far. The call was saved to your cloud. Jack shifted in his seat. You went too far, he muttered. No, I said. You thought I wouldn't go far enough. And now I was all the way back with proof. The lawyer cleared his throat. I need to confer with my office. No problem, I replied. I'll wait. But I didn't wait in silence. I slid a printed offer across the table. 3 pages. Legally drafted. Simple conditions. Full acknowledgement of forgery and withdrawal of the false document from public record. Transfer of estate into a public trust for housing displaced youth. Official statement naming me in the original line of succession. No edits, no erasures. Jack stared at it like it burned. You want to destroy our name? No, I said. I want to correct the record. Your reputation's not my concern. The truth is, the air buzzed with the weight of consequences. They didn't sign that day. Of course not. People like them don't surrender. They retreat. They calculate. But I saw it in their eyes the moment they realized I held all the pieces. I left with my documents untouched. I wasn't worried. I knew what was coming. 3 weeks later, I received a plain brown envelope in the mail. Inside, the revised trust agreement. Signed, stamped, witnessed. No apology, just admission through paperwork. The estate was no longer private property. It had been renamed the Hale Center for Transitional Youth. The website launched the same week. Clean graphics. Minimalist logo. No mention of me. But I didn't need it. I had something better than credit. I had truth. Truth backed by proof. By voices. By documents no PR spin could rewrite. And as I stood outside the building 1 week later, watching a group of teenagers carry donated furniture through the front door, I smiled for the first time in years. Not because I won. Because I made it impossible for them to lie again. That was the real legacy I walked away with. Closure isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes in a manila envelope with no return address. I didn't open the final letter right away. I let it sit on the counter for 2 days, like a ghost waiting to be invited in. When I finally peeled the flap back, I recognized the handwriting instantly, my mother's. The slant of the script. The way she looped her YS like ribbons. It wasn't a legal notice. It wasn't a demand. It was an apology. Or something shaped like one. She said she missed me. That she'd made mistakes. That the world had changed and maybe we could find each other again. But she never mentioned what she'd done. Not directly. Not once. That's when I knew. This wasn't remorse. It was strategy. A final attempt to rewrite the ending without rewriting the truth. I didn't reply. Not because I was bitter. But because I had stopped needing her recognition the moment I reclaimed my own name. Some ghosts are better left unopened. Instead, I walked into the common room of the Hale Center, where a group of girls were painting over old cabinets. They laughed at the terrible color choices, soft mint that looked like toothpaste, but they kept going anyway. They didn't know who I was. Not really. They just called me Rosy and asked if I could help open paint cans. I did. And it felt right. I didn't need to be family to belong. I just had to show up and stay. One night, I sat alone in the reading lounge with a binder in my lap. I'd labeled it, The Real Family Tree. Inside was a single sheet with one question printed in bold at the top. Who helped you survive? Below it were names. First names only. No legal ties. No DNA. Just stories. There was Lucia, the high school librarian who gave me her office key when I had nowhere to study. There was Nina, my old roommate who pretended I wasn't crying when I needed space to fall apart. There was Carla, who taught me how to write grant proposals and never once asked about my past. None of them were blood, but they were mine. Each resident at the center had a branch to fill out. Some wrote paragraphs. Others just scribbled names. One girl taped in a photo of her old dog with the caption, "He didn't judge me." Family, I realized, isn't who you're born to. It's who stands between you and the dark. And maybe that was the legacy I wanted all along. Not land, not forgiveness, not closure. Just a place to name the people who didn't leave. Spring came slowly. The trees outside the center bloomed awkwardly, half pink, half bare. The sidewalk stayed wet longer than usual. But inside the house was loud. Music thumped from old speakers. Socks dried on radiators. Laughter echoed down hallways with cracked wallpaper. One evening, a girl knocked on my office door. 17. Sharp eyes. Red hoodie. She hovered before sitting. "I saw your name on the building fund letter," she said. "Are you like the person who saved this place?" "No," I said. "I just refused to let it disappear." She thought for a moment, then asked, "What if my mom never says sorry?" I smiled. "Then make something better. And don't wait for her to notice." She didn't say anything, but her eyes settled. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it The Book of Kept Things. I started with a single line. "They cut me out to preserve their version of the truth. I rebuilt so the truth could preserve itself." This wasn't a happy ending. It was a clean one. And sometimes that's all a legacy needs. What did this story mean to you? Did it remind you of someone who helped you survive? Or someone who tried to erase you? Leave a comment below. We read every single one. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because every week we tell the stories no one else dares to. Let's make sure these voices are never silenced again.